Life is hectic, demanding, and doesn't stop. When honest with ourselves, we must confess we often don't know what the hell we're doing. The Larkcast is an ongoing conversation about the inclusive and mischievous nature of God's presence through the lens of all the things that make up this phenomenon we refer to as life. Astonishing grace and refreshing honesty collide right here for your weekly encouragement.
Welcome back to the Larkcast. My name's Tony. With me is Russ. What is Reclaim 9? Can someone remind me? That's how I want to introduce this thing. What is Reclaim 9? And then I want to be like, man, it's been so long, but I remember when I first started getting introduced to the truths of Reclaim 9, they meant a lot to me at the time. They were more impactful, then than they are now. It's more something that, you just kind of like, you just assume and believe now,
Yep. Yeah, it's like kind of part of your DNA in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I'm going to say something that's for some people will be a relief, and for some people in the ministry world, or even people within the church world, man, who are just from the member side of the equation, can be a little bothered by. But I'm convinced that teaching in general, right? Like, you can study the scriptures, dude, like the rest of your days, right? Billy Graham said something like when he was like 90 years old, like he felt like he was just getting started. And I believe that. I'm all for that. But the longer I live into this reality of life with Jesus, okay, marked by a freedom that he's brought about, a journey of faith, an unknown, right, adventure, day to day, the more I'm convinced that you almost need like a foundation, It's like there's like foundational truths that you learn that really, really shape like your whole paradigm. And then it seems like you don't have to keep studying them, you know what I mean? Like over and over and over, like a reclaim, right? Like there's these foundational truths that are such a game changer.
Yes.
And once you see them, it's like it's in you and you start living in light of them. And if anything, you encourage others in them, and then you might be encouraged also, right, by a brother or sister, man, as you can have moments of just neglect or forgetting or whatever it might be. But
Yes.
you don't have to keep studying it over and over and over and over and over again for the rest of your days.
No, I mean, the scriptures talk about the word implanted in you. Let the word of Christ richly dwell in you, not you richly dwell in the word. So I agree that, in Ephesians, I think it was, Paul summed up his theology: one Father, one Lord, one baptism, one faith. Kind of was his, doctrinal statement, so to speak. So he had the gospel and maybe a creed, if you could call it,
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. Yeah. They weren't like mass producing copies of Ephesians, man, for everybody in the known world to be able to have and study and read. And I mean, you're talking, dude, it would be 1,500 years from
Yes.
then before that was even a possibility.
Yes.
So
And then
much of what we think
everybody, and then all the like the capital D disciples, in all the churches are like always talking about getting back to the early church. Like, man, if we could just have what they had in the early church, we'd be good to go.
You mean like no sermons and no Bible studies? Or like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, guys, they didn't have copies of these.
Yeah, dude, 100%.
So it goes right,
dude, like
life, the word dwelled in them.
Yes, the word's been implanted in you. Let the word of Christ, and what is the word of Christ? Like, dude, it's
Jesus.
It's not that much, man. It's not a lot of information.
No, it's a person, man, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Man, that's Reclaim 1. That's the whole John series that we've done. If you're new to this podcast, feel free to check that out. I mean, incredibly enlightening about,
Wait,
and
are
I
you
say
recording?
that,
Are you recording?
I think so. But if not, you can delete this out.
I was like,
But
we went from having a conversation and you talking to people. I was like, wait a second.
I thought it was a good one. I'm like, hell, we might as well run.
Hell, might as well go with it.
It's not like we say that much. It's good. So you got to grab it while you can, baby.
It's true. Oh man, too
But
funny.
seriously, it's like, yeah, he lives in you, man. Like, this is who you're walking with. And all like, and I don't hear you saying like the scriptures, don't matter or neglect them as much as we're saying, like, let them be, they're true because they testify to him who is truth, and him who is truth has a name. He is life, he is truth, he's the way, he's the word. His name's Jesus. That's who you live in, that's who lives in you. Walk
Yeah.
with him.
No,
And
what I'm saying is
yeah.
I think God in his wisdom has brought, if you want to talk about like theologically robust, philosophically profound, like kinds of thoughts that will undo, you know what I'm saying, layers and layers of thought and behavior into simple parables.
Yeah, dude.
Into simple statements that even the most illiterate in a society can grab onto and believe, and things that philosophers can geek out on and talk over forever
And ever.
and that's what I'm saying. Like, in his wisdom, he's figured out how to bake truth and wisdom into his son, and in just these simple, like the way he lived his life, the things that he said, how he described what God is like. I think only God can do that, because for something to be profound, it needs to be like almost like nearly impossible to communicate and to grab onto. Right. So kind of like, the Greeks of Jesus' day, constantly pouring over conversation, right? Big gatherings. They gave their entire day to just, thought. And here comes, Jesus with a simple parable about two guys walking into a bar, and it'll undo you, man. It'll
it's a
but at the same
paragraph.
time comfort you and make your heart explode and be in awe of the love of God. So yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah, me too. I think that's why we fear the simple. Sometimes
it makes you obsolete. It makes the complex obsolete.
Yep. Yeah, and there's just, and not only that, but even, all the control mechanisms you're trying to drag into every equation possible in life to feel like you're, on top of something.
Yeah.
And it just pulls it right out from under you. It's like, no, here's just the simple truth. It's like, That's a great way to put it, man.
So we probably have to, say, okay, we're officially recording. I don't know where we're going to start this thing, but this
right
is
at the beginning, baby.
This is Reclaim 9. If you're joining us for the first time and you're wondering what the hell are these guys talking about, we kind of started in the middle of a conversation, and we want to bring you along. We've been talking through a book that we wrote together. It's called Reclaim, and that book went from pencil and pen scratches on napkins around pub tables to little write-ups and workshops and of an official training that we put together that no one wanted to buy. So we turned it into a book, put it on Amazon. It's available. You can look up Reclaim Johnson, Reclaim Sorcy. There's a few steamy romance novels with the same name. Just so you know, neither Russ or I's abs are on the cover of the book that we wrote. So that'll
True.
give you a clue as to which is the right reclaim you should be buying. Look for three gradient circles.
Somebody had wrote in one time and they were searching and they found what you're talking about. And they said that when they reached out, they said they thought it was me, but then they realized that dude was a little more tan. He's a little more tan than I am. So they were like, nope, here they are. Some circles, some yellow circles.
Dude, we should do an alternative cover of Reclaim with us with our shirts off.
Just have fun with it.
We should find someone we can't, because the other one I think is like a guy with like a wolf or something like that. We should just find like a husky dog that'll not kill
like a little toy poodle. Like a toy poodle.
We should.
That would be amazing.
But no, we're in Reclaim 9. The chapter's called Play, and it really is, I think, Spaces is how can we be the church just in the everyday? So how can the church, if you want to use this language, scatter right throughout the world and all the little nooks and crannies we find ourselves in, family and life and community, as we just, love on people and look for opportunities to share news of God's scandalous love. If those opportunities come up and people are open and willing to hear and willing to converse with us on that. And then how can the church gather to encourage, each other and just kind of like maybe live in a rhythm of that as neighbors, but then also as disciples together. And so that was the last podcast, and this one's called Play. Reclaim 9 is called Play, and really it's almost a conversation on if you could probably say church leadership, or how we kind of function together in the body. Maybe gifts could be a way to talk about that, how we're wired, how we're kind of like made in Jesus, and something in the church is really complicated and really only made available for a very certain few, who are allowed on stage and can come on staff and stuff like that. And then the church is mostly kind of like wired for consumption. The masses of people just kind of come and observe, and they kind of just consume a bit of, spiritual, offerings, advice, theater, entertainment. And so mostly it's just kind of like, well, leadership and maybe ministry is just for, a few who are called, who are really passionate, who went to school, when everyone else is just kind of, hey, just come so we can check your attendance and give us your money so we can keep all this stuff going.
Yeah. And then, they'll throw in like, you're involved, man, that, you've got a ministry, bro. Like, you're a parking lot attendant, right? Or a grader, or
make sure those kids ain't smoking them cigarettes out there in that parking lot.
Yeah. Watch old Fern, dude.
Fern, get to church.
Fern ain't been driving too well lately. She almost ran over Brother Bill last Sunday on the way into the service. But on a serious note, I mean, there are all these like volunteer acts, right? They go into like the big great showdown on a Sunday. And that oftentimes gets thrown under this umbrella board of like ministry. And I think what we did in Reclaim 9 is we're coming along and saying, well, ministry goes far, far, far beyond this. And at the same time, it's even more simple. It's something very organic. It's everyday flows of life. It's something that's like naturally coming out of you because of the Jesus who lives in you. So there's like these various elements of Jesus at work in us that we get to play along in. And I think that's Reclaim 9. So if you had to use like churchy words, you would say Reclaim 8 is like about missiology. It's like how you go about being the church in the world. Like, okay, cool. Well, then Reclaim 9, Play, is about ministry. Like what we do as people who are following Jesus. And what we're trying to unpack here is that doing is something that's connected to Jesus, who's at work in you, It's not something you're bringing to the table. It's not some weird list of gifts that you have and Bill over here doesn't have. And maybe if you worked hard enough, you could be like Bill and you could do these things. Like we're sort of like dispelling all of those myths from the scriptures and saying, yeah, none of this is in here, guys. This is beautiful and simple, and it's just Jesus at work in and through us. And this is the stuff that we get to really chew on. This is the tangible. This is the everyday flows of life. It's ministry. And everyone gets to play. There's no benches, right? There's no benches in the kingdom, man. There's no star-studded athletes who are on the court and everybody else just sits on the bench, and then everyone else is playing a role in, producing the environment. It's like, no. We all have been invited to come play in what Jesus is doing.
Yeah.
And Ephesians 4 is where we really go to. Ephesians is probably the book I would say we speak to the most in this chapter, because unlike some of the other letters that we find in the scriptures, Ephesians, couple just cool things to note here for everybody who geeks out on stuff like this. The city of Ephesus, okay, this is written right here in Reclaim 9, seemed to operate as a base for gospel movement, okay, due to its prominence as a hub of transportation and commerce. And unlike other Pauline letters, Ephesians doesn't address specific leader types, or deal with specific issues, okay, occurring inside this specific expression of the church. So due to its inclusive nature, many scholars believe that Ephesians was a letter intended for various expressions of the church throughout Ephesus and beyond. Almost like something that could get picked up in this sort of transportation hub and get, wherever they could possibly write down another copy of it, could spread somewhere else to help people think about how to go about ministry as the church.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is a broad general letter versus a real specific one, maybe like Galatians, which is a very personal letter to a very specific crew, like from Paul.
Yep. Yeah, so I was going to say real fast, Marcus Barth called it the Constitution of the Church, right? Just to kind of give you an idea, here's a look
Marcus
at how
Barth
you
is a
could go
constitutionalist, dude.
Yeah, I don't know about that. They say, he's a brilliant dude, but they say he was like a freaking tyrant, man. That dude loved to debate and would just bull over people, man.
Are you guys related?
No, but that's just because of all those characteristics I just listed that are opposite.
Yeah, we get into Ephesians.
Yeah,
I don't know
better,
how
better.
deep in the weeds you wanna get. Maybe we could save some, for people, because I know that there's been some people who have picked up Reclaim and are reading through it. But the whole idea is that, dude, Jesus has won, dude. He's a victor. He's overcome everything in his life, death, and resurrection. And there's some language in here that would be very similar to what someone would do when they, won a battle, had that victory in war. They would gather all the valuables of a particular town, city, and they would bring them back and they would distribute them and give out to everyone really the benefits of their victory. So there's some language that's very, very similar here, where it
what
says,
Jesus has done.
Yeah, but grace was given to each one of us according to the measure of Christ's gift. Therefore, it says, when he ascended on high, he led a host of captives and gave gifts to men. And so we have this victorious Jesus who in his resurrection really set us free and gave gifts to men. And I think one of the key, and so these gifts that he's talking about are according to the measure of Christ's gift, meaning all the categorical ways that we talk about ministry in this chapter, whether it be you're a teacher, whether it be you're an apostle, we can kind of break that down. Really just someone who's kind of a sent one, really is what it means. It's a little bit more robust. A prophet, an evangelist, a shepherd or a
Mm-hmm.
teacher. Really, when it says he gave gifts according to the measure of Christ's gift, what we mean by that is Jesus is the true apostle. He's the sent one from the Father, right? To
Mm-hmm.
the world to rescue. He is the true prophet. He's the mouthpiece on behalf of the
Yes.
Father, on behalf of the Trinity, to come and tell us what God is really like. He's
Yep.
the true evangelist, spending time with those on the margins, letting everyone know they're loved and included. He's
Mm-hmm.
the true shepherd that will sit with you, dude, and care for your heart and give you grace and patience and love you and be with you and practice presence with you and never leave you and never forsake you, even in the midst of all your shit.
Come on,
He's the
brother.
he's the true teacher who takes the complexity of God and breaks him down so that we can understand what he's like
That's
in
what I'm
simple
talking
things
about.
like parables, simple statements, right? Did I get through all of them? That was all of them, right?
Yeah, brother.
That was it.
That's why
So
I was. That's why I was singing along with you, man. You were on a roll, dude.
he's the true apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, and teacher. And so when he ascends and gives gifts to men according to the measure of his gift, what that means is he's living his life through us. Galatians 2:20. It's no
Mm-hmm.
longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me. Jesus is living his life through me. So that for me, one of my wirings is I'm kind of like this evangelist kind of teacher. And the only reason I'm like that is because of the presence of God in my life. The
Yeah.
only reason I'm like that is I'm borrowing from him. He's
Yeah.
living his life in me.
Yeah.
Because
There's debate out
if it
there
was
on
up
that,
to
though.
Tony, I wouldn't care about people. I would primarily just care about myself, which there's plenty of evidence like of that in my life too.
You'd still be the evangelist teacher. You'd still be like a salesy influencer who helps people see things, but it would just be pretty centered on like clothing brands,
Yes.
90s hip hop,
Mm.
craft beer, things like this. But yes, because of Jesus at work in you, right? You also start to see that wiring that was already in you because he's already in you. That's the craziest thing to me.
Sure.
And now you just really see that align more with things that lead to eternal life, man.
You
Yeah, in
know,
the Ephesians 4, like there's always this debate like around verses 7 through 11 on all these words here and what they really mean, and you kind of get these different camps that sort of exclude or people, but the bottom line is, you already hit the nail on the head, dude. He gave, right, gifts. The word gifts there, like actually the word, it means ministries. Okay, ministries given by grace. And then it says to each one of us, which literally means to each and every person.
mm-hmm.
So, like that list that you just ran through of Jesus, the apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher, working in and through people, inviting them to come play along in what he's doing in the lives of other people, wherever they are, in the everyday flows, right, of life. He's invited everyone to play in this. Everyone.
Yes. And
That's
what's
important.
cool, it's very important. And I think what's cool is when you embrace church as an identity and the way of the church in the world, whether it be the gathered, scattered nature of it as a way of friendship. In the former expression, you had 1 day a week. And not only
Yeah.
1 day a week, you had 1 hour, hour and 15 minutes. Maybe you stuck around for 2 services, 3 hours in 1 day a week, where the church, quote unquote, is trying to imagine ministry. Okay.
Yep.
And really all you have is an opportunity for one primary person who's a teacher. That takes up 45 minutes of it. And then you got a dude or a gal up there singing some songs. That's your other 20, 25 minutes. An announcement, and then maybe a prayer at the end. The band's probably got like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. Depends on if you're trying to be like Hillsong or whatever. You got like 8 lead singers up there. All of them
Mm.
are all of them are dancing around and making, hand expressions like everybody else who's doing the same thing across the world. So you got like only like 15 people, dude, are able to participate
Yeah.
in this. You know what I'm saying? Like in 1 hour of the day. And
Yeah.
I think what we're saying is church is an identity, and we've been placed, and we live in communities. We have families, we have neighborhoods, we have places that we frequent.
Mhm.
We have common interests in, live music, smoking cigars, sports, outdoor activities, working out, running, all kinds of, different things, and ways that we connect with other tribes and converge with people with similar interests. When you embrace the church as a way of friendship, everybody gets to play.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of opportunities for you to lean into, what Jesus is doing and how he's expressing himself through you to other people.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know, like, it's a couple things. One is you get a couple two tree things. Sorry, I was just with Chad Bazzara, dude, who was a firefighter in Chicago, and he does that phrase better than anybody I've ever heard. He just breaks it out randomly, and I cannot get out of my head. But we we I think we I guess what I'm trying to say here is there's an element of ministry you get to play in. I think is one of the most inviting things in the text. Okay. So when you were talking about like this, the big giant gathering with, a handful of people who are really using these and everybody else is a spectator. I know there's that crowd that's going to come in because I used to do it as a church leader for years where you would defend like, no, 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 you don't understand, the janitor. You don't understand the person who folded all the bulletins. You don't understand, the ministry of our sound guys. You don't understand the ministry of our greeters. And I would say like, we're not in this, what we're unpacking here from the scriptures is not diminishing that people said, hey, I want to serve and do these things. By all means, serve, welcome people, run the soundboard, you know what I mean? Fold bulletins. Great. But that is to me like, okay, that matters, like you said, man, for an hour, maybe an hour and a half on a Sunday for those who will come in a culture where the vast majority aren't and even more want nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing in Ephesians 4 is Jesus going like, yeah, cool. You wanted to serve and fold bulletins. Love it. But the ministry of what I'm doing in and through you looks like this. You look like someone who's, the apostle, right? Like you said, man, it's the sent one. It's someone who's going into a place and bringing up stories and insights into what God is like in places where it's not, among people who aren't in that conversation right now. Okay, they're establishing, right, good news in places. The prophet who's coming in and declaring, thus saith the Lord, right, kind of works like a rudder on a ship that's, in a sense, like keeping us pointed to, to what the scripture's actually saying versus what everyone around us is saying it's saying. I mean, that is like, if reclaims anything, dude, it's a spirit of that.
Yeah.
The evangelist who's going in and making positive connections with people like you brought up earlier and people coming around this. These are, I feel like when you're talking about ministry of Jesus in and, at work in and through you, even in the simple ways of everyday friendship, man, it's this. Mm-hmm. And I love that because I've seen so many people go, nah, man, I'm just not wired for that. That's why I just run the soundboard. Right. But then let's say they like the majority of people right now that have just been burnt out in the name of Christianity and walked away from this whole thing that we, created in the name of church. Now, what do? There's no soundboard anymore. Yeah. And they feel like, yeah, man, I guess I really don't have anything to give. And it's like, no, dude, I'm glad you ran a soundboard. Sounds like you're a servant and you've got some skill with sound. Dope. Don't confuse that though with the ministry that Jesus invited you to go play in, man. It's more robust than that.
Well, I think a lot of things have
It's
contributed to that. One is defining church as a building and a particular hour on one day a week within that building. The other thing is the professionalization of ministry.
Yeah.
We started to, have seminaries and schools, and like you started to really hone your craft as a teacher. It was only for those who were really, really talented,
Yeah.
at it. And because, church has been influenced so much by the corporate world, you begin to hone your product and you begin to get really, really good at,
Scaling it. Yeah.
pushing out your product, which means, the pool is going to get very, very small for who's able to hop on that stage and be a part of,
Mhm.
that thing. So people who I think who are like maybe teachers, but maybe they don't have like a dynamic stage presence, or, they don't look good, they're not very marketable. They don't
Sad, but
they
true.
don't
True in that world.
100%,
Yeah.
1,000%. Dude,
Why isn't that hit?
I've been in staff meetings and I've been around church leaders assess people's appearance when it comes to
Bro, and
pulling
their
someone on
apprentice
staff.
the apprenticeship on ramps into like megachurch leaderships. I've been in rooms where they're evaluating the appearance of their spouse.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Like, did she look like an NFL quarterback? No. Well, yeah, it's not gonna work.
Definitely if she looks like a linebacker.
NFL quarterback's wife. I have to. It's early. That's what I meant to say.
If she looks like an NFL quarterback, maybe. But if she looks like an interior defensive lineman, that's gonna be a no.
It's just so sad, man. Because you're right. You hear like teacher, and it's like, man, I'm not that guy. I can't break down
Right. So
Greek
you're
and Hebrew,
evaluating
and
that, right. You're
right. And it's like,
you're
no, no,
not
no.
thinking of, yeah.
You're not thinking of this verse. Do you love to help people grab onto what God said, like a friend in conversation? Your father, your brother, your next door neighbor, your kids. Well, yeah, man, I love to help them grab on like what it says. Well, guess
Mhm.
what? You're a
You're a
teacher
teacher.
that's a you're all of these things. Don't get me wrong. You're going, right. You're sharing good news. You're speaking what's true. So in a sense, there's all of these things are at work in and through us. But it just seems like one or two of them seems to always sort of be like raised to the surface. You know what I mean? Like
You have
some
like a
some
knack
really
for it.
operate it.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
find a lot of joy in it.
Oh, Russ, I'm not like Pastor so and so. I can't possibly be a shepherd. I don't have a counseling degree. And I'm like, well, do you care about the health of people? Yeah, more than anything. Yeah, man. Like my wife's always thinking about people who are outside who haven't heard this good news yet, and that's like seems to always drive her. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like an evangelist. Yeah, he
Yeah.
goes, for me, that's not the case. I just think first and foremost, I'm thinking about like, how's their soul? How's their soul? I'm like, well, guess what, dude? That's a that's Jesus the shepherd at work in you, man.
Yeah.
Go run in that.
You really want to like build trust with people, get to know their story, and you like asking lots of questions and
Yes.
listening and sitting with people, and you value friendships over the long haul and being loyal.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just like, I'm gonna invite 120 people into my driveway for a party, and I'm just gonna keep doing that.
Mm, yes, I could see that. 100%. That's I think for me it's taken me a long time, dude, because like you're right, you're running all of these things and you sometimes wonder like, man, which one is it, at the core, but there's I definitely think often about the spread and planting of good news in places, right? And among people where it's not.
Yeah.
Is always on my heart and mind.
You're very much an apostle.
And then second to that is like the truth of what it actually says because of how life-giving it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's that more like prophetic nature because
Yep.
it's very hard for me to be around. I'm just confessing here, but it's hard for me, man, to be around the ministry settings that are undoing good news in the name of good news.
Yeah.
And just watching people just get enslaved, man, to
Yeah.
this religion we call Christianity. And I'm just
Yep.
like,
Yep.
yeah, I'll stop there
Same.
before I start.
No,
Yeah,
same,
I know
dude.
that's in YouTube for sure.
Yep.
But
Yeah, so I think so. Reclaim 9. I think if you're if you're tra- if you're traveling with us through this journey, there's probably been a lot of like, aha, we can call them oh shit moments where a lot of
yeah,
things have been, kind of uprooted, undone, maybe new ways of thinking. And you're probably wrestling with a lot and you have a lot of questions. And please reach out, connect with us, shoot us a call. My cell phone number is 219-308-3808. Shoot a text, hello@larksite.com. If texting me personally is, seems crazy. But
it is true.
Reclaim 9.
And just so we're clear to everybody listening to this, I just don't want to be left out on this deal, but my cell phone number is 219-308-3808.
That's awesome.
I might sound like Tony when you answer. but just know it's me.
Yep.
I'm just kidding.
You might be surprised to know that you are gifted, that Jesus is living in you, that he has you living in a particular time and a place for a reason. And he's put people around you. And to discover that, to not let, the church in the West as it is right now, to dictate what is ministry, what isn't ministry, and how it ought to go. But really, church has an identity, looking around at the places where you exist and occupy, and then looking at Ephesians 4 and saying, Jesus, how are you living your life through me? How is my heart in sync with yours for people? And how do I start leaning into that?
Man, that's a great way to put it. Very simple and very pointed and true. I think you're right. And I think also, if you haven't grabbed a copy of Reclaim and you're listening to this, feel free, because one of the things I love about this chapter, which is hard to get into on a podcast, is just all the rooted language in it, right? There is a little bit of that kind of diving into, like, man, the Greek actually says this.
Sure.
Right? You start to see like, oh, and the purpose of this is not just to minister to this person, but like the actual equipping of them to go walk in these things that I do. And there's a result that comes from this body of Christ, all right, at work when it operates with Jesus expressing himself in and through us versus all of us doing a bunch of things for him. There's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And there's a result of that, right? There's a purpose behind that. There's a design of that. And again, you'll notice that in the chapter for sure, where that's unpacked in some pretty cool and clear ways, I feel like. And I mean, there's even some other topics we've kicked around, that we could even get into here in the future. I mean, leadership, right? Like, that's a big one, dude. Like, what do we do with this leadership thing, man? Worship. What about that one?
Yep. Spiritual growth.
Yep. So
sanctification.
It's
I was reading, what I want to get into next is we got to do Galatians at some point for sure. Because, dude, I found the nugget of freaking nuggets in Galatians. I'm not sharing it right now, but I will tell you when this podcast is over. Thanks for joining us on the Larkcast. Good conversation. This concludes our conversation of Reclaim. And I hope you were encouraged. Again, grab a copy, reach out. We'd love to meet you. And we'd love to be a friend to you as you're wrestling through some of these things.
And before we go, my number is 773-332-0926.
Man,
feel free to reach out anytime. Seriously.
How hard was that for you?
Oh, it went hard. I was just having fun earlier when you shared yours. I didn't want to follow it and be like, oh yeah, mine. Just so we're clear, mine is awesome. But yeah, seriously,
I will
we're
let people know that I have 674 unread text messages. So yes, please reach out. But
let's just be honest.
Don't be mad. Don't be mad at me if I'm a bad friend.
Let's be honest. We do love to have these conversations. I'm more available than Tony is. I have a separate business that I'm running. But if you really want to get a call scheduled, on a serious note, go to the website, larksite.com. You can get Reclaim there, but you can actually schedule a time, and we have someone on our team named Jameson. And I promise,
you actually want to get a hold of somebody.
That is
on Lark, do not text Tony.
And we can hop on call, we can chat, we can do all that. But
yes.
Yeah. Dude. Isn't it cool, man, to walk through these truths and then at the end of it find the courage to be brave enough to go, but I might be a bad friend. It's not that
I might be a bad friend. I am a bad friend. In a lot of ways, I'm a bad friend.
Well, it's hard to be a friend abroad. So
it's
yeah.
True.
But I guess for you, it's like even hard, like just next door.
It's true. So true.
Oh man.
All right, man.
Too funny. All right, till next time.
Cheers.